It must be bad news overload. Then we salute eternity.
Hello to Facebook, I guess. This is an attempt at breaking through the ban on live streaming. If you've been watching my YouTube channel, you will know that I am currently prohibited from live streaming until the middle of June because I was very naughty and I did a watch-along live stream to the 148 Gilead graduation. And so this is really an experiment in seeing whether I can sort of bypass the ban by means of live streaming on Facebook. There are now 3 watching. Fantastic. Hello to the 3 of you. 5. Oh, it's growing. That's encouraging. I literally did the opening spiel just to myself because there was no one watching. I guess I'm mindful of the fact that, you know, this is a pandemic situation. Lots of you watching this will probably be in lockdown, I guess, or what do they call it? Social isolation, whatever you want to call it. And so, you know, maybe there's a few with a bit of time to kill and a bit of time on your hands. And I'm interested to receive your comments, receive your questions, and just see if we can't, you know, weather this apocalypse together. So if you do wish to comment on this live stream, it should, in theory, pop up on my side. And if you have any questions or any comments, it doesn't have to be about anything I'm doing. It could be about almost anything, I suppose. Let's just have a conversation. In the absence of any comments at all, and I'm not seeing any through at the moment, I guess I'll just... here's one. Hello, Kimberly. Thank you very much. I'm glad that the comments are working. That's a relief. And Peter Braun says, hi, Lloyd. You are following the topic from JW. Never give up. I'll try, Peter. I'll try. I mean, I recently commented on these lines on Twitter. It just occurs to me that I can't do this forever. Well, obviously I can't do it forever. I'm going to keel over at some point. Look at my hair. My hair's atrocious. I guess that I'm mindful of the fact that, you know, that there has to be something to my life other than purely the activism work I'm doing. As of next year, 2021, I'll have been doing activism for 11 years because it was October 2011 that I founded JW Survey. So October 2021 will be 10 years of activism. Do I really want to do 20 years of activism? Do I really want to spend 2 decades of my time on this planet doing this job? Maybe I'll feel differently when it gets to 20 years, but as I feel right now, I'm more minded to make it maybe 15 years. I think 15 years is a fair crack of the whip. And maybe when I get to the 15-year mark in 2026, maybe I'll feel differently, but those are the lines along which I'm thinking at the moment. Hello to Simona. Hello to Randy. Good morning, Lloyd, from Long Island, New York. Beautiful city. Last time I was in New York was November. And we were doing some filming for The Truth About the Truth. We were interviewing Amber Scorer. And it was very surreal because I've been to New York on 3 occasions beforehand. And every time I've gone, it's been a really big deal. I absolutely love New York and love the experiencing the feel of it and the vibe of it. And it was so bizarre to literally drive into New York on our way from the Warwick headquarters do this interview in Brooklyn, and then almost immediately I was on a plane flying down to Texas, and it almost felt wrong to be in Manhattan in New York for such a brief period of time. It felt like a crime had been committed. Michael says, good morning from Massachusetts. Good morning, Michael. Diane Madden, hi Lloyd, one word, ugh. Diane, you're going to need to give me more information. Are you ill? Are you upset about something? Give me more to work on there. But I'm sorry that you're feeling out of sorts by the sounds of things. 38 now watching, gosh. Randy says, can you please give a brief explanation about what is going on in JW households? What are they telling their children? I don't know what's going on in JW households. I'm sort of in one, but not one of the kind that you describe. As I mentioned on my video that I uploaded yesterday, both of my in-laws are Jehovah's Witnesses, my wife's parents, and they're being told, not to attend the meeting. They are actually following the meeting by a video link from Zagreb Bethel, which, as I mentioned in my video, is a very responsible way, I think, of dealing with the pandemic. As far as the memorial is concerned, they have been told, or they've been advised to celebrate it in small groups. Obviously, I would have preferred them to do that from home as well. But I suppose small groups are still better than 100, 150 people crammed into a windowless building passing around objects. So that's as much as I know really on the ground about how things are working. And there was a bit of information as well in the video uploaded to jw.org, which I have to say is encouraging, even though, as I mentioned in my video, it's rather hypocritical of the organization to be heeding the warnings of Caesar's government in regards to how to respond to a pandemic, but not having the same approach to child protection. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm not even going to try. I am actually triggered by this. I need someone to calm me down. I do not want to be in the Great Tribulation. Gosh. I don't know what to say, really. Well, first of all, there are no guarantees that there won't be like a global disaster that will unleash enormous death and suffering. There's never any guarantees about that. But what I can guarantee you, well, first of all, as regards this pandemic, I can guarantee you that there are extremely clever people working as we speak to develop a vaccine or develop some kind of cure that will save lives. It's just a matter of time as to how quickly they're able to do that and to what extent the damage can be mitigated. But we will get through this. We will find a way through this pandemic. And the second thing I can guarantee you is that this is not the Great Tribulation. Okay? Even in the worst case scenario where millions or even billions die from a pandemic, even if a meteor were to smash into our planet and decimate humanity, that would not be the Great Tribulation and that would not be Armageddon. It would be a coincidence. It would have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the claims and predictions of 8 dudes in New York who are rubbish at protecting children. So, I do understand that many are triggered by what's happening and many are anxious, and it's understandable with the extent to which we were all brainwashed that a lot of this programming lingers in our subconscious and affects the way we interpret events like this. But anyone who suggests that this is the prelude to God annihilating 7.5 billion people so that 8 million people who follow a bunch of dudes in New York can occupy the planet and terraform it over the corpses of billions of men, women, and children. Anyone who wants to seriously suggest that needs their head checking. And frankly, would you want to live in that new world? Would you really want to live, a few feet above all that carnage, or the concealed remains of all that carnage? I've spoken along those lines many times on my channel. So I guess and again, I'm afraid I don't know how to pronounce your name, but the takeaway is, don't worry more than you need to, and certainly don't think that this is anything whatsoever to do with the repeatedly failed predictions of a cult, a New York-based cult. Aquila Picard says, I dread to think what they're telling kids. Very much agree with you there. It's I'm sure there's lots of fear-mongering going on. Randy says, what is their day like? Are they playing video games, watching movies, singing, or are they praying together? I don't know who you're asking about. I don't think my in-laws play video games. At this precise moment, they're actually working in the garden. So, because we have a fairly big garden and like a vegetable patch, and now that spring has sprung in this part of the world, they're getting the vegetable patch ready for to start producing, which I suppose is a rather useful thing to have in situations such as this. Although we could probably do with the produce now rather than in however long it's going to take for the stuff to grow. Sasha says, hi to all from Sydney. Hello there, Sasha. Nice to see you watching along. 42 now, 44 even, watching along on this impromptu coronavirus lockdown live stream that I'm experimenting with to see whether it's worthwhile doing this on a regular basis. Because let's face it, there are many of us who are simply not allowed to do anything. We're not allowed to work, not allowed to go to the shops. We're protecting our health. And if we are in social isolation, we may as well be in social isolation together. This is the online equivalent of hanging out of your Italian balcony and singing opera or playing the saxophone, whatever takes your fancy. Margus Nee Jr. says, greetings from Hapsalu. Margus is in fact one of my patrons, as is Sasha. So nice to see a good representation of my patrons on this live stream. Aquila says, I used to have nightmares as a kid about Armageddon, and that was without a pandemic. Well, again, it's predictable. It's understandable, that it has that profound effect. And I think that the impact on children is one of the most reprehensible parts of this group. The fact that doomsday fear-mongering ruins the development of a child so profoundly. If you don't mind, I'm just going to wet my whistle, because this is not a neatly edited video. This is a live stream, and I need to imbibe some vitamin drink. Keep those vitamins coursing through my veins at such a time as this. Diane, okay, so Diane commented earlier. She said, ugh. And now she's saying, I sent you a Facebook message asking about starting an NFP helping leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, similar to the Aftermath Foundation. Diane, Facebook messages are the worst way to get hold of me. I'm sorry, I don't, when I get up in the morning, I don't check my Facebook messages. I check my emails. Sometimes there's a voicemail that I'll listen to. I'm reasonably good at responding to people on Twitter, but Facebook, I mean, I'm using it now for this live stream literally because I'm banned from YouTube. Facebook is really just where I share things. It's not a place for me to, I don't know, network with people. So if you want to share something, by all means, drop an email to JW Survey and the team will take a look. As far as setting up a foundation, I guess my only, well, first of all, I'm definitely not against that happening if it can happen. My only concern is that we're talking about a religion with 8.5 million followers. When you're dealing with millions of followers, you're dealing with at least tens of thousands of refugees. And whereas with Scientology, they have a tiny cult with 25,000 followers, and you could say a manageable number of people who are freshly exiting in any given month. It's just simply not the same with Jehovah's Witnesses, where again, you're dealing with the magnitude of thousands, if not tens of thousands. It's nice to think that it could be possible to help. I think that the most immediate help that these people need is emotional support, which is frankly, to a degree, already accessible to them online in places like Facebook and Reddit. Anything beyond sort of emotional counseling and emotional support, we're then going into the realm of, I suppose, funding for higher education, which is what some have suggested, or some kind of maybe like a safe place for people to go and stay, maybe particularly young Jehovah's Witnesses who are exiting. All of that costs money, and I'm not convinced that it's possible to get enough money together to make a significant impact. And if you did manage to get money together, who would be holding the purse strings, and how on earth would you choose who gets to benefit and how many thousands don't benefit, given, again, the magnitude of the problem? So I'm always open to ideas, but I suppose that would be my concern is the feasibility. What's the suggestion, and what's the feasibility considering how big the issue is? But I'm sorry if you're upset in any way that I didn't respond to your Facebook message. Again, if you want to send an email through, please do so. Victoria says, "You're making such a difference. I hope you continue on." Thank you so much, Victoria. That's very kind of you to say. I can't guarantee that I'll continue on forever. I was just saying this earlier. It will be my 10-year anniversary next year. Do I really want to continue on to my 20-year anniversary, my 30-year anniversary? I think what I can see happening is doing this for around 15 years at the level that I'm doing it now, and then maybe dropping off so that I'm doing, let's say, a video every couple of months, and I'm just focusing purely on writing books and maybe doing the occasional documentary. I'd like to at some point scale right back so that I can just enjoy my time on this planet. You know, having put in a shift, having established a body of work, but I'm at least a few years away from reaching that stage. I'm in it for the long run, at least for the time being. Veronica says, "Good morning or evening from Melbourne, Australia." Hello, Veronica. We have another Aussie, or at least we did have another Aussie on the live stream in the form of Sasha, who is a JW Survey team member. Matt Dawson, or Dewson, sorry, who looks suspiciously like Marilyn Monroe, says, "Hi, Lloyd. Thanks for helping to wake me up. All the best from the Isle of Skye, Scotland." Wow, Scotland. I love your part of the world, Matt. Maybe I'll get to visit you there one day. Immensely pleased and proud that I've helped in some way, if that's the case. But I suppose give yourself a big pat on the back for being open to looking at the material to begin with. Kimberly Jarrow saying, "Are witnesses getting go bags ready?" Undoubtedly, Kimberly. I mean, goodness knows what conversations are going on in believing Jehovah's Witness homes right now. Jovan Lezama, who is in the process of a very bizarre maneuver with a snake, as it seems, says, "Good morning from Trinidad. Much love. Much love to you as well." I don't know whether it's Jovan or Jovan, but lovely to have that message from you. Okay, so there's currently 58 on our coronavirus lockdown live stream. We're surviving the apocalypse together, folks. Let's face it. It's a grim situation out there. We need to stay indoors. We need to regroup. And this impromptu Facebook live stream is, first of all, a way of doing that. And second of all, sort of just a prototype or a test to see what it's like streaming on Facebook while I'm banned from streaming on YouTube for reasons that will become obvious if you look at some of my recent videos. There's a very challenging name here, which I'm going to try and somehow struggle through like it's some kind of army assault course. Hopgarden Homestead Humlegurden says, "Hi from Sweden. Thank you so much for your work." Well, thank you, Hopgarden Homestead Humlegurden, for your message. I'm trying to figure out what's going on in your avatar. It looks like you're holding a bowl of milk and clutching some eggs. So the message seems to be that you produce eggs and milk, and it says support your local business. So well done for producing eggs and milk, certainly a valuable commodity in the current situation. If you weren't all the way over there in Sweden, you would have a customer in me, I have to say, although we don't need the eggs, we just need the milk. We do actually have chickens outside, not far from the bunker, as it happens. Shona Ainsley says, "Think they need stat bags now." That may well be true, Shona, and I approve of your choice of visiting the Guinness, what looks like the Guinness factory, if I'm not mistaken. Tracy Jeffrey says, "JW households, okay, doomers." It's an interesting phrase. I've not heard that one before. Doomers. Jason Parker. Now I know what to call you, Jason. If I see you, I must call you Parks. And good afternoon from the south coast of the UK. It's bright and sunny, windy, and all a bit strange. Sending you and your family so much love. Thank you so much, Jason. Lovely picture there in your avatar. It sounds like the south coast of the UK is the place to be at the moment. Shona Ainsley saying, "Stay bags." If you say so, Shona. Aldo Freddy says, "We are still alive, and don't worry, I won't affect you." LOL. I think you mean infect. I wasn't concerned about your ability to infect me, given that this is online and not in person, but I appreciate the reassurance anyway, because goodness knows there's lots of panicking at the moment. Fritz Wyson says, "This is what we do for live videos when YouTube fails." That's exactly it, Fritz. We need to find a way around YouTube's bans, arbitrary bans on live streaming. So I'm not allowed to do live streams again until the 12th of June, which is unfortunate because now is precisely the time that I need to be able to do live streams because everyone's on lockdown, aren't they? But hopefully if I can find alternatives, such as by doing it on Facebook, maybe that's a workable alternative. We'll have to see. And Andrea Noble says, "Hi from, is it Filey, Andrea, Yorkshire Coast. Keep up the good work." Thank you so much, Andrea. Yorkshire is a beautiful part of the world. I've only been there once or twice. I was obviously on the other side of the Pennines. but certainly a beautiful area of the UK. And Tracy Jeffrey there saying, I got an invite in Letterbox to Memorial, keeping it in case I run out of toilet paper. Well, this is what we need. We need out-of-the-box thinking. We need ways of averting the apocalypse using whatever materials are at our disposal. Clearly, there is a run on toilet paper at the moment. Although it must be said that I went to, Deanna and I ventured out to our local supermarket. Was it yesterday that we went or the day before? I think it was the day before yesterday. That's it. Because yesterday I was spending all day filming and editing for my coronavirus video. The day before that, we went to the supermarket, and I honestly did not know what to expect because I hadn't really set foot in a supermarket since the, you could say, the height of the pandemic. And I was actually pleasantly surprised at how well stocked it was, certainly with toilet paper. There were some aisles, there were some parts of the shelves where it looked like they were empty, but then in the middle, in the central section where people were walking through, they had these massive stacks of the stuff. So my only conclusion is that the more, I think I tweeted about this. I have a theory that the more Brits and Americans there are, the less toilet paper there will be. Croatians are clearly not that bothered about toilet paper when there's a pandemic. They're far more sensible. And when you went to the aisles where there was like tinned food and pasta and that sort of thing, that's where you really saw that shelves were being emptied. But even then, there were still plenty of options. Deanna and I were not short of we were not short of produce heading back, shall we say. We have a fully stocked pantry. But yes, I definitely approve of your choice of emergency toilet paper. Shona Ainsley saying, think they need stay bags now. Yes, so instead of going somewhere, your point is that they need a bag for staying at home, which I suppose negates the need for a bag. The whole point of a bag is that you can take it somewhere. If the whole point is that you need to stay at home, yeah, I don't think you really need a bag then. Fritz Wyson says, XJWs have gone through hysteria before. Learning to put more confidence in science is much more viable. Yeah, well, this is the thing. I think this is the first pandemic that I can remember. I don't know whether, feel free to correct me, but I can't remember whether SARS or bird flu was a pandemic. Certainly neither of those were on the level that we're seeing now. But whenever there has been a problem of this kind, science has always prevailed, hasn't it? In fact, I'm wondering, since I'm happy to go on answering questions, but I suppose I'll wait for more questions to come through. And, oh gosh, there are lots. I was just going to recommend that I read a book for a short while for you that's quite encouraging. Yeah, let me read. We're not going anywhere, are we? Hopefully no one's in a massive rush, unless it's really late where you happen to be and you need to go to bed. But if that's the case, then you can fall asleep to the sound of me reading some encouraging thoughts. Why not, So I'm going to break off from answering questions, and if you'll just bear with me, I'm going to take another swig of my vitamin C drink to bolster my immune system. And, actually, I think the book's upstairs that I need to read. Let me hunt down the book, because if there are any of you in the 58 now watching who are panicking about the current situation, maybe what I'm about to read will be helpful for you. Okay? So I might be gone for a few seconds, or it might be like half a minute or so, but I will be back. Just bear with me. 50 of you have survived my absence. 50 of you have prevailed despite the lack of meaningful content. Okay, let me find the part that I wanted to read. Well, that's irritating. Right, Diana had put a bookmark in that had something sticky on it, and it had stuck itself to one of the pages. Okay. Right, I'm going to read to you for a brief while. I'm reading from the book Homo Deus, which is by Yuval Noah Harari. And there's a relevant section on diseases. Maybe you've read this already, but if you haven't read it, hopefully you'll find it enjoyable or maybe reassuring. After famine, humanity's second great enemy was plagues and infectious diseases. Bustling cities linked by a ceaseless stream of merchants, officials, and pilgrims were both the bedrock of human civilization and an ideal breeding ground for pathogens. People consequently lived their lives in ancient Athens or medieval Florence, knowing that they might fall ill and die next week, or that an epidemic might suddenly erupt and destroy their entire family in one swoop. The most famous such outbreak, the so-called Black Death, began in the 1330s somewhere in East or Central Asia, when the flea-dwelling bacterium Yersinia pestis started infecting humans bitten by the fleas. From there, riding on an army of rats and fleas, the plague quickly spread all over Asia, Europe, and North America, taking less than 20 years to reach the shores of the Atlantic Ocean. Between 75 million and 200 million people died, more than a quarter of the population of Eurasia. In England, 4 out of 10 people died, and the population dropped from a pre-plague high of 3.7 million people to a post-plague low of 2.2 million. The city of Florence lost 50,000 of its 100,000 inhabitants. The authorities were completely helpless in the face of the calamity. Except for organizing mass prayers and processions, they had no idea how to stop the spread of the epidemic, let alone cure it. Until the modern era, humans blamed diseases on bad air, malicious demons, and angry gods, and did not suspect the existence of bacteria and viruses. People readily believed in angels and fairies, but they could not imagine that a tiny flea or a single drop of water might contain an entire armada of deadly predators. The Black Death was not a singular event, nor even the worst plague in history. More disastrous epidemics struck America, Australia, and the Pacific Islands following the arrival of the first Europeans. Unbeknown to the explorers and settlers, they brought with them new infectious diseases against which the natives had no immunity. Up to 90% of the local population died as a result. On the 5th of March, 1520, a small Spanish flotilla left the island of Cuba on its way to Mexico. The ships carried 900 Spanish soldiers along with horses, firearms, and a few African slaves. One of the slaves, Francisco de Aguirre, carried on his person a far deadlier cargo. Francisco didn't know it, but somewhere among his trillions of cells, a biological time bomb was ticking, the smallpox virus. After Francisco landed in Mexico, the virus began to multiply exponentially within his body, eventually bursting out all over his skin in a terrible rash. The feverish Francisco was taken to bed in the house of a Native American family in the town of Kempoalan. He infected the family members, who infected the neighbors. Within 10 days, Kempoalan became a graveyard. Refugees spread the disease from Kempowalan to the nearby towns. As town after town succumbed to the plague, new waves of terrified refugees carried the disease throughout Mexico and beyond. The Mayas in the Yucatan Peninsula believed that three evil gods, Ecpets, Ozancac, and Soyacac, were flying from village to village at night, infecting people with the disease. The Aztecs blamed it on the gods Tezcatlipoca and Zipototec, or perhaps on the black magic of the white people. Priests and doctors were consulted. They advised prayers, cold baths, rubbing the body with bitumen, and smearing squashed black beetles on the sores. Nothing helped. Tens of thousands of corpses lay rotting in the streets without anyone daring to approach and bury them. Entire families perished within a few days, and the authorities ordered that the houses were to be collapsed on top of the bodies. In some settlements, half the population died. In September 1520, the plague had reached the Valley of Mexico, and in October it entered the gates of the Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, a magnificent metropolis of 250,000 people. Within 2 months, at least a third of the population perished, including the Aztec emperor Cuitlahuac. Whereas in March 1520, when the Spanish fleet arrived, Mexico was home to 22 million people. By December, only 14 million were still alive. Smallpox was only the first blow. While the new Spanish masters were busy enriching themselves and exploiting the natives, deadly waves of flu, measles, and other infectious diseases struck Mexico one after the other, until in 1580 its population was down to less than 2 million. 2 centuries later, on 18th of January 1778, the British explorer Captain James Cook reached Hawaii. The Hawaiian Islands were densely populated by 500,000 people who lived in complete isolation from both Europe and America, and consequently had never been exposed to European and American diseases. Captain Cook and his men introduced the first flu, tuberculosis, and syphilis pathogens to Hawaii. Subsequent European visitors added typhoid and smallpox. By 1853, only 70,000 survivors remained in Hawaii. Epidemics continued to kill tens of millions of people well into the 20th century. In January 1918, soldiers in the trenches of northern France began dying in their thousands from a particularly virulent strain of flu, nicknamed the Spanish flu. The front line was the end point of the most efficient global supply network the world had hitherto seen. Men and munitions were pouring in from Britain, the USA, India, and Australia. Oil was sent from the Middle East, grain and beef from Argentina, rubber from Malaya, and copper from Congo. In exchange, they all got Spanish flu. Within a few months, about 500 million people, a third of the global population, came down with the virus. In India, it killed 5% of the population, 15 million people. On the island of Tahiti, 14% died. On Samoa, 20%. In the copper mines of the Congo, 1 out of 5 laborers perished. Altogether, the pandemic killed between 50 million and 100 million people in less than a year. The First World War killed 40 million from 1914 to 1918. Alongside such epidemical tsunamis that struck humankind every few decades, people also faced smaller but more regular waves of infectious diseases, which killed millions every year. Children who lacked immunity were particularly susceptible to them, hence they were often called childhood diseases. Until the early 20th century, about a third of children died before reaching adulthood from a combination of malnutrition and disease. During the last century, humankind became ever more vulnerable to epidemics due to a combination of growing populations and better transport. A modern metropolis such as Tokyo or Kinshasa offers pathogens far richer hunting grounds than medieval Florence or 1520 Tenochtitlan, and the global transport network is today even more efficient than in 1918. A Spanish virus can make its way to Congo or Tahiti in less than 24 hours. We should therefore have expected to live in an epidemiological hell with only one deadly plague after another. However, both the incidence and impact of epidemics have gone down dramatically in the last few decades. In particular, global child mortality is at an all-time low. Less than 5% of children die before reaching adulthood. In a developed world, the rate is less than 1%. This miracle is due to the unprecedented achievements of 20th century medicine, which has provided us with vaccinations, antibiotics, improved hygiene, and a much better medical infrastructure. For example, a global campaign of smallpox vaccination was so successful that in 1979, the World Health Organization declared that humanity had won and that smallpox had been completely eradicated. It was the first epidemic humans had ever managed to wipe off the face of the earth. In 1967, smallpox had still infected 15 million people and killed 2 million of them, but in 2014, not a single person was either infected or killed by smallpox. The victory has been so complete that today the World Health Organization has stopped vaccinating humans against smallpox. Every few years, we are alarmed by the outbreak of some potential new plague, such as SARS in 2002-2003, bird flu in 2005, swine flu in 2009-2010, and Ebola in 2014. Yet thanks to efficient countermeasures, these incidents have so far resulted in a comparatively small number of victims. SARS, for example, initially raised fears of a new Black Death, but eventually ended with the death of less than 1,000 people worldwide. The Ebola outbreak in West Africa seemed at first to spiral out of control, and on 26th of September 2014, the World Health Organization described it as the most severe public health emergency seen in modern times. Nevertheless, by early 2015, the epidemic had been reined in, and in January 2016, the World Health Organization declared it over. It infected 30,000 people, killing 11,000 of them, caused massive economic damage throughout West Africa, and sent shockwaves of anxiety across the world, but it did not spread beyond West Africa, and its death toll was nowhere near the scale of the Spanish flu or the Mexican smallpox epidemic. Even the tragedy of AIDS, seemingly the greatest medical failure of the last few decades, can be seen as a sign of progress. Since its first major outbreak in the early 1980s, more than 30 million people have died of AIDS, and tens of millions more have suffered debilitating physical and psychological damage. It was hard to understand and treat the new epidemic because AIDS is a uniquely devious disease. Whereas a human infected with the smallpox virus dies within a few days, a HIV-positive patient may seem perfectly healthy for weeks and months, yet go on infecting others unknowingly. In addition, the HIV virus itself does not kill, rather it destroys the immune system, thereby exposing the patient to numerous other diseases. It is these secondary diseases that actually kill AIDS victims. Consequently, when AIDS began to spread, it was especially difficult to understand what was happening. When 2 patients were admitted to a New York hospital in 1981, one ostensibly dying from pneumonia and the other from cancer, it was not at all evident that both were in fact victims of the HIV virus. which may have infected them months or even years previously. However, despite these difficulties, after the medical community became aware of the mysterious new plague, it took scientists just 2 years to identify it, understand how the virus spreads, and suggest effective ways to slow down the epidemic. Within another 10 years, new medicines turned AIDS from a death sentence into a chronic condition, at least for those wealthy enough to afford the treatment. Just think what would have happened if AIDS had erupted in 1581 rather than 1981. In all likelihood, nobody back then would have figured out what caused the epidemic, how it moved from person to person, or how it could be halted, let alone cured. Under such conditions, AIDS might have killed a much larger proportion of the human race, equaling and perhaps even surpassing the Black Death. Despite the horrendous toll AIDS has taken, and despite the millions killed each year by long-established infectious diseases such as malaria, epidemics are a far smaller threat to human health today than in previous millennia. The vast majority of people die from non-infectious illnesses such as cancer and heart disease, or simply from old age. Incidentally, cancer and heart disease are, of course, not new illnesses. They go back to antiquity. In previous eras, however, relatively few people lived long enough to die from them. Many fear that this is only a temporary victory and that some unknown cousin of the Black Death is waiting just around the corner. No one can guarantee that plagues won't make a comeback, but there are good reasons to think that in the arms race between doctors and germs, doctors run faster. New infectious diseases appear mainly as a result of chance mutations in pathogen genomes. These mutations allow the pathogens to jump from animals to humans, to overcome the human immune system, or to resist medicines such as antibiotics. Today, such mutations probably occur and disseminate faster than in the past due to human impact on the environment. Yet in the race against medicine, pathogens ultimately depend on the blind hand of fortune. Doctors, in contrast, count on more than mere luck. Though science owes a huge debt to serendipity, doctors don't just throw different chemicals into test tubes hoping to chance upon some new medicine. With each passing year, doctors accumulate more and better knowledge, which they use in order to design more effective medicines and treatments. Consequently, though in 2050 we will undoubtedly face much more resilient germs, medicine in 2050 will likely be able to deal with them more efficiently than today. In 2015, doctors announced the discovery of a completely new type of antibiotic, Teixobactin, to which bacteria have no resistance as yet. Some scholars believe Teixobactin may prove to be a game changer in the fight against highly resistant germs. Scientists are also developing revolutionary new treatments that work in radically different ways to any previous medicine. For example, some research labs are already home to nanorobots that may one day navigate through our bloodstream, identify illnesses, and kill pathogens and cancerous cells. Microorganisms may have 4 billion years of cumulative experience fighting organic enemies, but they have exactly 0 experience fighting bionic predators, and would therefore find it doubly difficult to effect defenses. So while we cannot be certain that some new Ebola outbreak or an unknown flu strain won't sweep across the globe and kill millions, we will not regard it as an inevitable natural calamity. Rather, we will see it as an inexcusable human failure and demand the heads of those responsible. When in late summer 2014 it seemed for a few terrifying weeks that Ebola was gaining the upper hand over the global health authorities, investigative committees were hastily set up. An initial report published on 18th of October 2014 criticized the World Health Organization for its unsatisfactory reaction to the outbreak, blaming the epidemic on corruption and inefficiency in the World Health Organization's African branch. Further criticism was levelled at the international community as a whole for not responding quickly and forcefully enough. Such criticism assumes that humankind has the knowledge and tools to prevent plagues, and if an epidemic nevertheless gets out of control, it is due to human incompetence rather than divine anger. Important point. Similarly, the fact that AIDS continued to infect and kill millions in sub-Saharan Africa years after doctors had understood its mechanisms is rightly seen as the result of human failings rather than of cruel fortune. So in the struggle against natural calamities such as AIDS and Ebola, the scales are tipping in humanity's favour. But what about the dangers inherent in human nature itself? Biotechnology enables us to defeat bacteria and viruses, but it simultaneously turns humans themselves into an unprecedented threat. The same tools that enable doctors to quickly identify and cure new illnesses may also enable armies and terrorists to engineer even more terrible diseases and doomsday pathogens. It is therefore likely that major epidemics will continue to endanger humankind in the future only if humankind itself creates them in the service of some ruthless ideology. The era when humankind stood helpless before natural epidemics is probably over, but we may come to miss it. So 45 of you have muscled through that part of the live stream. I just find that part of the book Homo Deus very interesting to read, very prescient in light of current events. I hope that it just adds a little bit of perspective. Yes, it's very worrying and troubling what's happening at the moment with coronavirus, but humanity has faced worse, and we are better tooled, we're better resourced to resist these pathogens in 2020 than we were hundreds of years ago. We will prevail. So I hope you found that reassuring to some extent. Peter Braun, I'm going to carry on with comments now, by the way. Peter Braun says, in Germany, doing the daily morning topic by WhatsApp groups. So I think what Peter means is that they're doing the day's text by WhatsApp. Fair enough. Fair play to them. It's not really something I do anymore, if I'm honest. Julie Harkup says, hi from Windsor. You will be keeping us sane. Thanks so much, Julie. I do hope so. I hope that what I was just reading provided a little bit of, again, perspective. It's not saying that everything's perfect, or indeed this everything will be perfect. It's just saying, look, things are so much better than they were in the past, and we're far better equipped to deal with these situations. If you're just joining us, by the way, this is the coronavirus lockdown live stream, and it's my attempt at just bringing a little bit of levity to a very serious situation, allowing us to all hang out together online by means of comments and questions that you're kindly submitting. It's also, if I'm honest, a little bit of a test run, bit of a dry run of what my live streaming capabilities might look like while I'm banned from streaming on YouTube. Janet Malaby says, hello from Kent. Hello, Janet. What does your avatar say? Love me when I least deserve it. I can't read the rest because it's obscured by Facebook's logo. Sorry about that. It looked very profound. Cynthia Smith says, this is not the first pandemic humanity has survived. Very well said, Cynthia. Randy says, thank you for saying there are extremely clever people working as we speak to develop a vaccine or some kind of treatment. These are exactly the types of reassuring words we need to hear right now. Well, I hope. I mean, It's so easy, isn't it, in crises like this to just get swept along. I agree to some extent with what was said in the jw.org kind of report on the coronavirus, that if you're just going to completely immerse yourself in the news, it could potentially lead you to a dark place, or it could just rob you of some perspective. I think we need perspective at times like this. And I think that although it's important to take prudent measures, it's also very likely that hysteria can make things worse. So just keeping a lid on the anxiety and the hysteria, I see as a positive thing to aspire to. Nikki Gino says, morning from Michigan. And it seems that Nikki has a very substantial piece of knitted headwear in her avatar. Let's just see here. Jason says, so you think, Lloyd, that we should all be a bit kinder to current JWs at the moment? Any aggressive or confrontational stuff will probably scare them even more. We don't want to do that, do we? Hang on a moment. Well, I obviously agree with you. I just, speaking from my own perspective, I try to be kind full stop anyway. I mean, they probably wouldn't see it that way. They would view me as being very, how can I put it? They would see me as being very in their face, perhaps a threat to them purely by my work on YouTube. But my work on YouTube is something that I'm not forcing anyone to watch, They have to want to watch it. I'm not going to chase them around. That's the whole point with my views on dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't lose a wink of sleep if someone decides that they want to be a witness, with or without the facts at their disposal. I just reserve the right to do what I can to make the information available to them if they find themselves at a point in their life where they want to objectively analyze their beliefs. And if they're not at that point in their life yet, then anything I say will go in one ear and out the other. So I definitely agree with you that we need to be kind, but I think it's something that should continue both before and after there's an emergency pandemic. I think we need to be kind full stop, You catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Fritz Wyson says, I wonder if Jehovah's Witnesses think they are safe from the virus and not practicing full, safe social distancing. Either way is proof that God doesn't protect them. I think there probably is a degree of that, Fritz, to be honest. I have heard some alarming rhetoric, anecdotally, of witnesses saying, if I die, I die. The paradise is just around the corner, so who cares? And if you think about it, it's rather ironic that a religion that claims to so highly value the sanctity of life takes such a lackadaisical attitude when life really is at risk or life really is in danger. It kind of says a lot about the sort of nihilistic nature of the religion. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some very bizarre, very unfortunate responses to the pandemic among believing Jehovah's Witnesses. Hopgarden Homestead, Humlegarden, hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, says, I don't want to live in the JW world. I rather sleep well in death. Good grief. Fair play to you, but please try and stick around, Hopgarden Homestead, Humlegarden, because, yeah, no one's forcing you to be part of that anymore. Aquila Picard says, definitely worthwhile, probably in response to something I said earlier. Margareta Vikström says, hi from Helsinki. Hello, Margareta. Randy is laughing out loud. Fritz is saying hello from northern British Columbia in Canada. Wow, now that is I guess you could say, an isolated part of the world, the sort of place where you'd imagine it's not that easy, probably, unless you're really trying hard to catch a global pandemic. Certainly lots of opportunities there in northern British Columbia for isolation. Matt Dewson says, who again has very suspicious facial similarities to a certain Hollywood icon, says, just said to my partner this morning, most of our friends have sent messages of support at this time. Ex-witness brothers and sisters, not a word has been heard from them. So much for their telling us how much they love us. Yeah, that's I guess, look, their mind is not their own. They aren't in control. When you're part of a group like Jehovah's Witnesses, it's very easy to allow your basic humanity and your basic concern for other human beings to be completely bypassed. So I guess my expectations would be greatly reduced when we're dealing with those who are under the thrall of Watchtower. Randy says, staying hydrated is your responsibility. Drink up. I'm reasonably hydrated at this moment, although depending on how long this live stream goes on for, I may disappear for another short while to restock my beverage and maybe use the restroom, as you Americans like to call it. Michael Snook Stout said, what on earth is going on in that avatar? I feel like I need to know what that... There's a child's head and there's some kind of structure behind it. And like, curiosity is consuming me at this point. I need to know what that thing is and what the significance of it is, I guess. Hello from sunny Sebring. Is it pronounced Sebring? That seems to me how it should be pronounced. I'm going to say Sebring. And if Sebringians don't call it Sebring, then catch up. And that's in Florida. And Fritz Weissen again says, as a retired paramedic of 20 years, I have worked through many viral cases and have seen when it has gone bad. Make no mistake, this virus is aggressive and the whole world needs to follow healthcare orders to isolate. Definitely agree with you there, Fritz. So Julie is saying, you're banned from YouTube, question mark, tear emoji. Yes, well, not from YouTube. I'm banned from live streaming on YouTube. So I was a very naughty boy, Julie, and I did a watch-along live stream of the 148th Gilead graduation, and as a result, mid-live stream, 90 minutes in to a 4-hour live stream, myself and Mark O'Donnell were ripped from the airwaves, and a DMCA takedown was issued, and it resulted in a copyright strike, the first of 3. Hopefully there won't be 3 or my channel gets taken down, but there was a copyright strike, and as a result, I'm banned from live streaming on YouTube until the 12th of June. So I'm basically testing my ability to thwart YouTube's ban by instead coming on Facebook for the occasional coronavirus lockdown live stream, which is what I'm calling it, for want of a more imaginative title. Cynthia Smith says, hi from Central New York, 25 years after leaving the organization, and the pandemic still has my brain spinning, even though I know it's not the truth as they call it. I think that there's lots of people who will relate to that, Cynthia. I think we can just chalk it down to remnants of JW coding that have managed to make it deep into our subconscious. But the whole reason why I've just been reading from this book is to show that, you know, there is a need for perspective. And though doomsday groups like Jehovah's Witnesses do like to jump up and down and proclaim the end is nigh when this sort of thing happens. The truth is that humanity has weathered this sort of situation and prevailed multiple times, and our ability to prevail is only increasing the further through history we go. So I hope that if you were around when I was reading those few pages, I hope that you drew some comfort from them. Patty McFadden says, thank you for always keeping us informed. I don't know whether I always keep you informed, Patty, but if you feel that way, then I'm not going to object. Margaret Weather says, JW children live in constant state of anxiety. Sad, really. There should be a study. Do you mean like a research study? Might not be a bad idea, just to find out the psychology of being raised as a Jehovah's Witness and what sort of trends manifest themselves in people's behavior as opposed to not being raised in that environment. Sarah Southern says, hello from sunny Bolton. No, that's a rubbish Bolton accent. Bolton. Sorry, Sarah, I feel deeply embarrassed. I've forgotten how to do a Bolton accent. I did used to go to Bolton a few times, and I even did, I think, a couple of quick builds in your neck of the woods. But I'm glad to hear that it's sunny. My only question is your avatar taken? Well, it can't be taken in Bolton, can it really? I feel a little bit let down because I would have liked to have seen the sunniness of Bolton reflected in your avatar. Instead, it seems that that's a holiday photo, isn't it? Probably. Oh, no, hang on. It says Bolton Hospice. So probably, am I assuming you work at Bolton Hospice and that's just generic artwork from the hospice? But if so, fair play to you. You are doing very important work. Cynthia Well Edjogu says, how can we do without the three apostates? That's a very good question, Cynthia. I'm surprised more people don't ask that question. How can we do without the three apostates? Cynthia is referring to my colleague Chris Shelton. He has a regular show where myself, Chris, and Jonathan Streeter get together and compare notes between our respective former cults. Chris is a former Scientologist. Jonathan is a former Mormon. And obviously many of you will know that I'm a former Jehovah's Witness. And we discuss a certain topic and how it relates to our experience. So, but because it's not my YouTube channel, I'm not responsible for the timings of said episodes. So take your complaints to Mr. Shelton and demand that the three apostates re-emerge on his channel. I love you guys when you get together. Why can't you love us, Cynthia, when we're not together? That's what I want to know. Why is your love conditional? I'm joking. I'm sure you do love us even when we're not together. Fritz says, stay safe out there. Battle zone front lines in Italy. Gosh, you know, Fritz, we are not that far away from Italy where we are now. I say not that far. If I were to drive to Venice, which I'm obviously not planning to do, if I were to drive to Venice, it would take me about 4 hours. That's how relatively close I am to Italy. It's just literally over the Adriatic from Croatia, and it's quite concerning to know that there is so much. Well, my first and foremost, I'm obviously deeply concerned for the situation on the ground in Italy and how much pain and misery and suffering there is for Italians. But you also can't help but think, you know, we're just a hop, skip, and a jump away. But having said that, Croatia is much less densely populated than Italy is. It's a very small population, Croatia, I think 5 or 6 million for the country. So it's much. I suppose it's much easier for me and my family to self-isolate out here in the countryside in Croatia than it would be if we were living in the middle of Milan or Florence or whatever. Let's see. Okay, so Diane says, not upset at all. I will send an email. Thanks, Diane. That was with regards to a query that Diane wanted to chase up. Cynthia says, I am in the dark in Northern California. Oh dear, Cynthia. Is that intentionally, or is there some kind of power cuts, or have you stumbled into a cave or something? I hope that you eventually manage to see the light in your predicament. Fritz saying, same here, 5 a.m. So probably just because it's very late at the moment in California. That might be where the darkness is coming from. Yeah, so Michael here explaining about the DMCA complaint and the fact that I'm banned from live streaming on YouTube for 3 months, hence why I'm here on Facebook, just to explore my options for future live streams. See if this is successful. Is this something that you folks want me to do more of? Let me know in the comments. Thank you, Randy. I do try my very best. A good sense of humor certainly helps you in times like this. Laura Plant says, so many members on the XJW groups on Facebook have been receiving texts or phone calls from their Jehovah's Witness relatives along the lines of, we told you so. No real love or concern. The arrogance never ceases to surprise me. I suppose it shouldn't surprise you though, Laura, because this is what they've been craving, isn't it? This is what they've been waiting for. Or they think this is what they've been waiting for. They think this is the end of the end. I can remember I said this, I think, on my latest video, that it reminds me of 9/11, really. And I realize that I'm now at an age where when I say 9/11, there are some watching when I'm doing a YouTube video who won't remember what that was like, you know. That's how far back it is now, 19 years ago. But those of you who can remember 9/11, I'm sure will see similarities in the feeling, that the general state of fear and apprehension and uncertainty. It wasn't a pandemic, but there was very much a feeling of, oh, crap. What's going to happen now? It was like, I guess, a Pearl Harbor moment where something that you thought could never, ever happen did happen. America was attacked, and the feeling was, what's going to happen next? What's the retaliation going to look like? And I'm not going to get into America's foreign policy decisions following 9/11, but certainly the event itself was a very unsettling thing, and the coronavirus outbreak definitely feels up there, if not maybe slightly worse, because of the impacts it's having socially, and the fact that people are having to self-isolate. It's we're social creatures, aren't we? We crave being able to socialize together, even if we're not in the mood to socialize, or we don't have the circumstances to socialize. We like to at least know that that's a possibility, and when that possibility is taken from us, things feel very serious, don't they? And so, yeah, predictable, I suppose, that Jehovah's Witnesses are rubbing their hands at what's happening, but I am rubbing my hands at being able to point to all this hysteria years, if not decades in the future, and use it as an example of how ridiculous the whole Jehovah's Witness mentality is. As I said in my latest video, I'm relishing using the clip of Stephen Lett saying these are the last days of the last days, or whatever he said. I'm going to treat that like a fine wine I'm going to put it on the shelf, just let it mature. And then in the future, it's going to be among the most embarrassing clips that Watchtower won't want people to watch. It's probably to the point where if you watch it or you're found circulating it, you would be interpreted as being an apostate because it's so damaging. That's how stupid Stephen Lett's going to look in years and decades to come. So, yeah, they can jump up and down all they want, but they're only going to end up with egg on their face. Seriously. Kimberly Jarrow says, can I get an autographed book, Lloyd? Yes, you can, Kimberly, but it really depends on how and when. I'm sure I can help you there. It's just a case of how we make that happen. But I certainly have no objections at all to signing a book. It's the very least I could do, as long as you promise to read it. Marina Soldatos Kouzopis says, how are things going on there? Here in Greece, schools closed March 11th and most stores seems to be working with people staying in. Yeah, similar situation here, Marina. Croatia responded quite quickly, I think, to the need for social isolation, and, you know, measures have been in place. I was at one point very anxious to fly out to the UK in defiance of the pandemic because of the ICSA hearings, but even then it was a case of, should I really be doing this? And it was what you might say a big dilemma, because it was a case of this being the kind of you could say the defining moment of my many years of activism was the opportunity to appear before a public inquiry and face down Watchtower in a hearing room. So that's why I was so determined to go if it was physically possible. But the pandemic, you could say, outmaneuvered me, and to the point where I was actually very, very relieved when the whole thing got taken out of my hands and ICSA was postponed. We don't know how long for yet. But here in Croatia, they're taking everything very seriously. There are still people out and about. If you drive into town, it's not like a complete ghost town, but it's certainly much less busy than it would normally be. And when you go into the shops, there are people, you know, bulk buying to some degree, but definitely not the way they're doing it in countries like America and Britain. So there are still, you know, you can fill your shopping cart really fairly comfortably without panicking too much. So I think that there's less panic here in Croatia, and partly I think that's because, number one, people don't really have the money to be splashing the cash on bulk buying, because the average Croatian is on a fairly low salary, and also they're probably thinking about whether their job's going to be waiting for them at the end of this. So they're probably being quite frugal. Probably that's helping to some degree as well. But yeah, we've not seen much evidence of people going overboard with panic buying and that kind of thing. Cindy Hustat says, good morning from Ontario, Canada. Good morning, Cindy. I'm not readily familiar with whereabouts Ontario is. Probably it's sort of in the middle. Hang on. Isn't Toronto in Ontario? I don't know. My geography is rubbish when it comes to Canada, I'm afraid. I'm only really familiar with British Columbia because that's where I've been. But wherever it is, I hope that, you know, you're comfortable and you're safely quarantined or safely isolated from the pandemic. Robert Power says, just accidentally seen this. Well, there we go, Robert. I hope that you are finding it remotely entertaining. This is the coronavirus lockdown live stream, the first of what could be many. We'll have to wait and see. Nilda Gomez says, hello from Miami. My goal today was stay away from internet, but this might be fun. I'm glad that I was able to twist your arm back to the internet, Nilda. Although, if you can find something useful to do away from the internet, that might not be a bad idea. Let me just dare to glimpse down how many comments. Oh, good grief. Actually, that's manageable. I think what I might aim to do then is get to the end of the comments, because I've been streaming now for 1 hour, 22 minutes. So let me try to battle through to the end of the comments. I might end up having to skip one or two, especially if it's just like saying hello or something. How about we try that? So Scarlett Holy says, good morning from Houston, Texas. Good morning, Scarlett. I've been to Texas, just not been to Houston, so maybe one day I'll get to go there. Janine Mitchell Algio says, my mom actually reached out to me and asked how I was doing with all this. I'm disfellowshipped and was shocked. Yeah, I can imagine there being some who will kind of, how can I put this? They'll try to be diplomatic and anticipate that you're already kind of being persuaded to go back. So they'll, rather than kind of sneering at you and rather than saying told you so, they might want to kind of gently kind of beckon you back. But hey, you know, I suppose any contact is better than no contact at all, because you just never know how you might be able to capitalize on those slim pickings and maybe find a way of opening some kind of dialogue by which you can help your mother. Fritz Weissen says, limiting internet so not to be bombarded by COVID-19 news is difficult. The news keeps changing all the time. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, even though it's very tempting to just switch off the news, do you really want to be the last to know something that you absolutely need to know in a situation, in an emergency situation like this? So it's definitely like an area where balance is needed, I guess. Robert Power says, good afternoon. Hello, Robert. Katja Schalborg Clausen says, hi from Denmark. Hello, Katja. Love the hashtag in your avatar with a very forceful recommendation. Let's just see here. Elaine Goodall says, hi from Lancaster, UK. So glad the Jehovah's Witnesses have seen sense and cancelled the memorial, especially as my 79-year-old uncle still goes along. Thank you so much for all your hard work. Yeah, I'm this is one of those things where lives are at stake, and the wrong decision would literally lead to people being at risk of dying. So I was personally very pleased. I would have liked slightly more, if I'm honest. I would have liked them to stress that, you know, it would be advisable to commemorate the memorial at home in all cases, just like a blanket thing, rather than saying it's a country by country thing. But at least this gives the opportunity for local government to say, no, you're doing it from home. So what Watchtower is effectively saying is, we'll leave it to the governments to decide, which again is better than insisting that the memorial be commemorated regardless of what the local situation is. So I was very pleased to hear that was the response. That was the recommendation. Michael Snook Stout says, I wonder how many Jehovah's Witnesses are in their basement bunker telling their I acted human story. I've lost you there, Michael. I've lost you there, but probably there are some in their bunkers. Julia Marie Evans says, Shumi Lloyd. Is that a Welsh thing that you're saying to me? I don't speak Welsh, I'm afraid, although I do have Welsh ancestors, as my surname suggests. Michael Cullen Spencer, I hadn't heard from my quote-unquote father in years, and I got a text out of the blue. Malachi 3 verse 7, it caught me by surprise. Yeah, there's going to be people assuming that this is the time to say, I told you so. And, bring it on. Bring it on. Yeah, we'll see how that text ages, shall we, over the course of the next few years or decades. Robert Power says, good afternoon from sunny Cheshire, UK. Cheshire, of course, where yours truly hails from. So I don't know how close you are to sort of Wilmslow area, but that's my old stomping ground. And I'm glad to hear it's sunny at the moment. I was actually supposed to be in Wilmslow today. Yeah, I was. I was supposed to be in Wilmslow today, so it would have been sunny. We were supposed to be doing filming there for The Truth About the Truth after travelling to Wilmslow from London from the ICSA hearings, but there we go. Wasn't to be. Nilda Gomez has some important advice. Guys, if you're running out of toilet paper, wax all your bottom. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. It really helps to save toilet paper sheets. Thank you, Nilda, for that important advice. You see, you can't accuse me of not helping to disseminate helpful information during a pandemic. Janine Orris says, hi, good morning from San Diego, California. Good morning, Janine. I'm assuming it's still very dark, as we're hearing in your part of the world, but hopefully, albeit at this ungodly hour, you are enjoying a little bit of socializing, a little bit of recreation online in this lockdown phase that we're in at the moment. Je suis le canary says, people like me with reactions to fragrances live in this level of social distancing every day. The reason for our social distancing is normally fragrance chemicals, but now we are also doing it for COVID-19. Stay safe, everyone. Yeah, I would argue that perfume is less likely to kill you than COVID-19, but I certainly take your point. Cynthia Smith says, in my small neighborhood, people are reaching out to one another in the way humans should. I have shopped for vulnerable friends and neighbors and seen many others doing so while the fear-ridden witnesses hide. Good for you, Cynthia. Well done for just doing your best to be kind to people. I think that's the thing to do, isn't it? When there is an emergency situation like this and people are, it's bringing out the worst of people, try to, if you can, compensate a little bit by just showing acts of kindness. You just don't know what effect and what impacts that's going to have, that small act of kindness is going to have on someone. Jennifer Schmidt says, good morning, Lloyd, from the coast of Maine, USA. Good morning, Jennifer. I'm imagining there's at least some light where you are at this time. So good morning, welcome. Make yourself a coffee, Jennifer. I think you deserve that, don't you? Leslie Forrest says, my dad will be gutted that you're banned from YouTube. He loves your info and thinks you're amazing. Leslie, I'm not banned from YouTube. I'm just banned from live streaming on YouTube. So there's still going to be the regular number of videos on my channel. It's just that if, for example, there's a breaking story where we need to do a Watchtower in Focus, it won't be a Watchtower in Focus live. It will be a normal Watchtower in Focus where we just record it and then upload it. So it's just a temporary prohibition on live streaming. I can still upload videos as normal. So please don't go telling your dad that I won't be on YouTube. Okay. Nilda, very insistent on the need to wax your butts. It helps. Nilda has seemingly found a source of great relief in the buttock area. Oh, crumbs. You pronounced the thing that I pronounced perfectly. I'm not going to try it again. I'll get it wrong. You're welcome to visit anytime. Thanks so much, Andrea. That's a good question. Robert Power asking, if the Premiership is cancelled, do you think Liverpool deserve the title? Well, they do deserve it because they were. Let's face it, they were going to win it. I guess it's just a case of sorting it all out so that there are no harmful precedents set. So my preference personally would be, and I think Gary Neville has suggested this as well, that they basically get all of the Premier League players who aren't infected with coronavirus and all of the coaching staff, managers, etc., get everyone that they can, make sure they're all free of coronavirus, and then put them all in a completely sealed off sports complex and just let them thrash it out over like a week or 2 weeks, and just have like a tournament, like a World Cup style tournament where they all finish their respective fixtures and just do it in 2 weeks and just total isolation from the outside world. I think that could probably be quite a big money spinner because goodness sake, because we do have like a captive audience, don't we? And lots of football fans are wanting something to watch on the television. So that would be my preferred way of dealing with it. Just, you don't have to have the crowds. You don't have to have all the normal fanfare. Lock all 20 teams away in a compound somewhere, making sure, first of all, that they're all clear of the COVID-19, and just let them have at it, as far as I'm concerned. Peter Braun says, strange we are living in the red zone in Italy. We never had problems, toilet paper or other things. Peter, you're actually contacting us from Italy, from the red zone indeed. So, gosh, I hope you're okay. I hope you're managing to stay safe. It must be very distressing what's going on around you. Yeah, Margus saying it would be hilarious if the governing body makes another Stay Alive Till 2075 campaign. Well, what we saw Stephen Lett saying is as close to that as you're going to get, really, isn't it? These are the last days of the last days. How is him saying that in 2020 going to look in 2030, 2040, 2050? It's just not going to age well. The further forward in time we go, the more ridiculous that's going to look. Right, I think I'm pretty close to wrapping up at this point. Just out of curiosity, I'm going to see what the very latest comments are. Yeah, Je suis le canary really doesn't like perfume, it seems. Oh, now there's a good comment. Yes, I absolutely do want coffee, and I'm heading up now. So if you can make me a coffee, darling, that would be much, much appreciated. Thank you. So listen, I hope you have enjoyed my inaugural coronavirus lockdown live stream. I'm going to kind of gauge the response, and if this has been, interesting for people, if people have enjoyed it, then maybe I'll do another one in the future, and we'll see how things go. But lovely to spend some time with you all. I hope that you have found this sufficiently entertaining and or diverting. Whatever you're doing, stay safe, stay inside, and weather this pandemic as best you can. So I will see you all soon. Take care.